If the NFL ever held an expansion draft, which Denver Broncos players currently on the 2021 roster would be protected? We break it down. We interact with Broncos country from the South Stands to the end zone on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back into a brand new episode of the show. Happy Wednesday, wherever you're at, all across Broncos country. Very glad to be back with you once again to talk Broncos football. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, Director of Video Content at Pro Football Network and Broncos Analyst for the Locked On NFL Network and 9 News. You can follow me on Twitter at Cody Roark NFL. Make sure you follow the show on Twitter as well at Locked On Broncos. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube for daily exclusive Denver Broncos video content and coverage all year long. Plus, you get the podcast in audio format on your favorite audio podcasting platform, wherever you get your podcast. But ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the action on today's episode of the show. A really cool idea that's going around with the NHL looking into an expansion draft for the Seattle Kraken, one of their newest additions as an NHL franchise. They are designating players as protected from being able to be picked up by these new expansion teams. And often at times, rookies are protected. So we're going to play a little bit of a game, and we're going to share some of Broncos country's responses as to the players that they would protect. If, in fact, the NFL ever had a new team and there was an expansion draft, which Broncos players, we're going to go with 11, which 11 Broncos players would be protected that are currently on the 2021 NFL roster as if it was happening this year. I'm going to give you mine first. So the list that I had put together, I did it based on offense. I did it on defense. And in my head, I went back and forth. Now, keep in mind, rookies are protected. So you don't have to worry about Javonte Williams. You don't have to worry about Patrick Surtain or any of the Broncos rookies this upcoming year. But I wanted to take a look at the key players on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. One of these players is going to have an uneven number in comparison to the other. So we had to look at value. Starting things off on the offensive side of the ball, I had selected Garrett Bowles as one of the key guys. You don't want to have a situation where you lose your best left tackle and all of a sudden it becomes an issue for your team again. So Bowles would be protected. For the Broncos, he was my first choice, to be honest with you. Cortland Sutton would be the second choice. Jerry Jeudy would be the third choice. Noah Fant would be the fourth choice on the offensive side of the ball. And then Dalton Reisner. Now, I know what you're going to ask me. Cody, how come you didn't choose quarterback? Or which quarterback would you choose? Now, I didn't choose a quarterback specifically, even though that I know that it's probably important to have that. But in the case of this little game that we're playing, I didn't feel like I needed to. However, let's go to the side where if I actually did address quarterback here, which quarterback on the Broncos roster, if I had to protect any, would I specifically protect? I look at the comparisons between Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater. I would protect Drew Lock just because he's younger and he has a little bit more to offer than Teddy Bridgewater at this point. That's just my opinion, right? It may be completely different from yours. I respect your opinion if you feel otherwise. But I feel like if you're going to be starting up a new NFL team, maybe you want to throw a veteran guy out there like Teddy Bridgewater. So maybe a team would pick up Teddy in that regard to be that expansion guy. For a new team, you want to have maybe a veteran player. You know, there's also the other risk too. Let's say that Drew Lock were to be picked up in an expansion draft and all of a sudden he goes and lights it up with that team. And all of a sudden you're stuck there wondering, how come the Broncos didn't protect him? I could already see the arguments formulating for that. I'm not going to get too deep into those weeds here because I feel like we talk about quarterback enough for this team when there's other positions, other storylines that are going that I think are super important. So that would be the offensive side of the ball. I think in terms of my selections for the Denver Broncos, obviously having 5 players there, which means that I'm going to go with 6 players on the defensive side of the ball for the Broncos. So my first selection for the Broncos defensively, I think was Bradley Chubb. I would protect him at all costs. I think that he's got a very valuable future here for the Broncos. And if there was ever another NFL team that were starting up, I would worry about him being one of the first players that maybe a team goes out and they picks if he was not designated with a protected status there. So Bradley Chubb would be protected on my list. Obviously, Justin Simmons being locked up with a long-term contract for the Broncos. There's no way in hell I would let Justin Simmons be taken or picked up by any other team at this point in time. So Justin makes the second player. Draymond Jones would be my third player that I protect, obviously due to his his youth, how young he is in the NFL, the experience so far that he has in a rotational role was valuable. I think he has a chance to be a blossoming defensive superstar in Vic Fangio's defense, the next big-time impact player in the Broncos D, in my opinion, would be Draymond Jones. So he's my third protected guy there. I would also have Shelby Harris. Considering what he's been able to do, I think you have to have a really good pass rush, and you might be able to substitute one or two guys at other positions to maybe keep him on the team. So I'd go Shelby and Draymond, which leaves Mike Purcell, I think, obviously off this protected list. I think that some team you have to run the risk of a team picking him up, and you have to hope that your younger guys behind him are actually ready to be able to step into that role. Outside of that, there's also Bryce Callahan. I designated him now, yes, hypothetically speaking, right now, he's got 1 year left on his deal, but he is also in line for maybe a contract extension by the Denver Broncos if he plays well and stays healthy this upcoming season. I think you have to have good guys in the secondary. And now that I'm starting to go over my list, I'm starting to realize that, this was a tough decision. Do you go with Bryce Callahan, or do you go with maybe a younger guy that you have? Now, keep in mind, Pat Surtain, he is protected, but guys like Michael Ojemudia, Ronald Darby, Kyle Fuller, these guys aren't designated as protected on my list. So now I'm starting to see, as I formulated this, and I'm telling you, the listeners of the show, yes, you're going to miss out on some guys that maybe you can make a stronger argument for in terms of being protected. So Bryce Callahan's on my list. And to conclude, the total number of 11 players that I have chosen for the Broncos designated protected list, it's Von Miller. A wrecker of worlds. Could you imagine, for example, yes, he's on 1 year left on his deal, but could you imagine an NFL expansion team happens? They hold an NFL expansion draft on that team. One of the first players they take is Von Miller. That would be devastating, and it would be kind of frustrating. But, you get the sense that, you want to protect your most valuable players. I think that maybe you can make an argument here, and this is where I start to see it as well in hindsight, that, even though that Von has 1 year left on his deal, he's in his 30s, he wants to play 5 to 7 more years. Would you risk designating him as a protected player? I mean, if you didn't, I would say that he's assuredly gone. Someone is going to take him. He's not going to be on your team anymore if you did not protect him. Any team that was out there looking for an edge rusher, they would be so dumb to pass up if Von Miller was a free guy. So I can see it there, but maybe you want to protect another player. I'm eager for your feedback in the comment section down below. Broncos country as to who you think I could have or should have protected. But we're also going to get into some Broncos country's responses as to who they would protect coming up here in just a moment. But Broncos country, we got to pay the bills. And the way we do that is one of our good friends, our sponsor of today's episode of the show, our good friends over there, betonline.ag. And betonline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. The NFL season is fast approaching, and you get all the action and you can track it at betonline. So before tip-off happens, before preseason launches up the week of August 5th, the Hall of Fame game, the Dallas Cowboys, the Pittsburgh Steelers, you need to head over to BetOnline on your laptop or your mobile device to check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information today, folks. And don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the action as the NFL season approaches us. And you can head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's when you use promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Getting deeper into the weeds here of the idea of an NFL expansion draft, which Denver Broncos players would be protected. You've got my list, and you may agree, you may disagree with it. Let me know in the comment section down below on YouTube, on the channel Locked On Broncos. If you're not yet subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on. That way, anytime there's a new episode, you have access to it right away. You can take us with you wherever you want. And also, you can catch the audio podcast on your favorite audio podcasting platform. But I asked Broncos Country this question on Twitter, and the amount of responses that I received, there was a ton. I had probably like 47 responses, several quote tweets, 69 likes on this. And the conversation, I think, dove a little bit deeper into whether or not, can you protect rookies from that designated status? Are they protected? Would you go with the quarterback here? So we're going to start things off here with Mr. Boggins on Twitter, Marcus Boggs, an avid listener of the show. He gave me Justin Simmons as one of his guys, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, kind of very similar to my list here. He listed Patrick Surtain, but, Marcus, on this one, rookies are protected, so you don't necessarily have to have Surtain on your list, my friend. Garrett Bowles, Dalton Reisner, Draymond Jones. Hey, we're very similar with our list here. And then he put Drew Lock, and he put in parentheses, just because we need somebody throwing the ball of value. I think you can make the argument when you look at Teddy Bridgewater versus Drew Lock. Who would you rather have on your NFL team? Who would you rather protect if it's between those two quarterbacks if there were an expansion draft? I think the majority consensus would be Drew Lock. So no arguments from me here, Marcus. Thank you for your comments, your feedback. And just a reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're not on Twitter, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Cody Roark NFL. When we do these interactive segments, I want you to be able to get your questions answered and your thoughts shared here on the show. So Joel Stevens is up next. He says, Garrett Bowles, Justin Simmons, Bradley Chubb, Cortland Sutton, Dalton Reisner, Noah Fant, Draymond Jones, Ronald Darby, Von Miller, and Shelby Harris there. Now, obviously, Surtain, he listed Patrick Surtain, but Pat Surtain is protected there. And then somebody had responded to his saying Draymond Jones and Darby, and he put a question mark and a laughing emoji. I don't think there's anything funny or wrong with the selection of Draymond Jones. I mean, if you look at what Draymond Jones can be or what the potential prospects are for him, it makes sense for the Broncos to protect a young player like him. Do you want to lose a guy like that and not have a valuable option behind him that maybe is not yet ready to overtake that role there? I don't know. Some people, they want to combat and they want to argue about everything. Well, it's okay. You know, your opinion is your opinion. I respect it, but let's get to the point where we're not disrespectful to other people just because they have a different opinion than you. Clay Dowd says, Garrett Bowles, Noah Fant, Bradley Chubb, Justin Simmons, Jerry Jeudy, Javonte Williams, Patrick Surtain. Once again, no rookies here. And they said, in my opinion, Drew may be good, but if a draft were to happen right now, not worth protecting as much as the guys that I have listed, in my opinion. Johnny Teixeira says, in order of importance, it's Garrett Bowles, Bradley Chubb, Justin Simmons, Reisner, Sutton, Jeudy, Fant, Quinn Miners making an addition there, but he's a rookie, so he's not, you don't have to worry about him. Patrick Surtain, he's a rookie. Javonte Williams, he's a rookie. You don't have to worry about protecting them because they're already protected. But Von Miller here. And then Kai Olay says, limited thought put into this, but I'm assuming like NHL rookies, they don't need protection. So this is actually spot on here, Kai. Thank you for your response. He says, 1, Garrett Bowles. Number 2, Dalton Reisner, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, Draymond Jones, Bryce Callahan, Justin Simmons, and Von Miller as the designated protected players. He says high priority put on players that have multiple years remaining. And he says, no, I didn't forget about Chubb. So interesting right there that Chubb is not protected. I think that in a similar situation, you protect Von Miller, leave Bradley Chubb untouched. I think that Bradley Chubb is gone. I think some team would be saying, hey, we're going through our list of edge rushers here. There's no way we're going to pass up on Bradley Chubb. He's got that stature now at this point of his career. I don't think many teams would pass up on him if he were available. And then a lot of the other responses, it did say that, making the assumption here that rookies are automatically safe. That's very true. In terms of that, Jolene, Uganda's Joy 01 says the vets that I would protect would be Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Dalton Reisner, Garrett Bowles, Noah Fant, Bradley Chubb, Justin Simmons, Draymond Jones, Alexander Johnson, Mike Purcell, and Von Miller. I don't know if you necessarily want to go too heavy on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I went 6 players to my 5 on the offensive side. It's really hard to find that balance. Now, give me 12. Okay, then I'll go 6 offensive players, 6 defensive players. Boom, we're going to protect it there. But outside of that, a lot of great responses here listed by Broncos Country. I don't know if the NFL is ever going to get to a point where they embrace maybe the idea of an expansion draft because of the fact that they may look to add a franchise. Now, keep in mind here, the NFL, they're always looking at ways to profit, make money, and in order to make money, you have to spend money. So you look at other teams. There could be a chance that maybe a team moves to St. Louis. There's an ongoing lawsuit right now by the city of St. Louis against the NFL in the means of about $1 billion about the whole move where the Rams moved out of St. Louis. There's a lot of shady details behind that. I'm not going to go too far into detail on that because I don't know all the details, but the article that I read, it's brutal. And there's maybe some collusion there with Jerry Jones getting involved with obviously the Kroenke family and the whole situation, how the Rams departed St. Louis was not on good terms. So where could a potential expansion team go? I look at all the opportunities. The NFL wants to expand globally. There's been some talk about the NFL adding a team in London. In my opinion, this would be the worst idea possible. Now, don't get me wrong on that. I think that the NFL, there is an untapped fan base all across the globe. We talk about Mexico. We talk about Brazil, South America, overseas in the UK and the European countries. The issue at hand with having maybe a team in London is not only just the cost of travel, but I also think that it's negative in terms of the impacts on players. When you travel from one area, I don't know if any of you have ever left the United States, but if you ever have, if you've traveled to another country, I mean, that takes a lot out of you. It really does. The jet lag, the ample time of preparation opportunity, it would be very, very rough, I think, for the logistic process on the NFL side of things. And I think that the NFL needs to continue to expand and going global. in a sense of bringing games to international cities. But I don't believe that you should ever create an international NFL team. I just think with the current climate of how things are just in the world right now, I just don't think it makes sense for the NFL. I mean, monetarily, yes, you have a chance to tap into those fan bases that maybe aren't as exposed to the NFL just yet as maybe you'd hope for them. But I do know that over in the UK, there's a ton of avid NFL fans. I just don't know if having an NFL team over there right now makes sense. I do like the idea of them continuing to go overseas and play games. And maybe we'll see the Broncos go overseas. They're going to have to in the next 8 years. It's going to be something that's required in accordance to what the NFL wants from them. The international series, the Broncos will have to play in an international game. It's not going to be in 2021, though. So eager for your thoughts on that. Are there any other cities in the United States where you could see an expansion team? Could Portland, Oregon maybe be an area where there's an expansion team? I know that Oregon's always wanted to look at an NFL team. I don't know the feasibility of it, especially in a town like Portland. But, what about the countryside? What about North Dakota? I mean, could you see that there? Could North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, could you ever get an NFL team in any of those areas? To me, I think it would be really intriguing. You can create a stadium with a really good backdrop, overlooking the Yellowstone. I don't know. That's just a little bit of a hypothetical I'm throwing out there. But Broncos country, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Also, tweet me on Twitter if you ever have any Broncos questions. You want to talk with me one-on-one at Cody Roark NFL. My DMs are always open. Just let me know. Give me some time. I'll respond to everybody as much as I can. But Broncos country, coming up here in just a moment, we're going to get into our closing thoughts on today's episode of the show. A former Broncos coach is battling for his life in critical condition. We're going to talk about Greg Knapp and what's going on right there, and also some things to look forward to in the next week when the Broncos get ready to report for training camp at the UC Health Training Center. But before we do that, let me tell you about Built Bar, which is one of the sponsors of today's episode of the show. Built Bar is the premier protein bar that is out there on the market. It is the Von Miller of protein bars. When you need something that's going to come off the edge really quickly and hit you and give you some energy, it is Built Bar. Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the market that has 9 amazing flavors. My personal favorite, cookies and cream, peanut butter brownie, and for a limited time offer, they have lemon almond cheesecake now available at built.com. There is a flavor for everyone, for you, for your cousin, for your wife, for your uncle, for your brother. They have a flavor that everybody is sure to love because the bars are made out of 100% chocolate and they're soft and they are easy to chew, and you can get your hands on a box of Built Bar today. Not only are Built Bars the great tasting protein bar for you, but they're also the healthiest tasting protein bar out there on the market for you today. Each bar contains around 17 to 18 grams of protein, only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar. That is the best bang for your buck here, and that's why we rock with them at the Locked On Broncos podcast. It is my daily go-to for when I need a pick-me-up, and you can get yours today by going to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 at checkout. That's going to get you 15% off your next order. Once again, promo code LOCK15 is going to get you 15% off your next order at BuiltBar.com. As we jump into the fourth quarter action of today's episode of the show, ladies and gentlemen, some interesting news around the NFL. Los Angeles Rams running back Cam Akers had tore his Achilles while training for the upcoming NFL season, which means that for the LA Rams, they are going to be without their lead running back entering the 2021 NFL season. Cody, why are you talking about this on a Broncos podcast? Well, I want to throw out the idea. We talk about the Broncos having a running back competition at training camp between Melvin Gordon, Royce Freeman, Javonte Williams, Mike Boone. This is the perfect opportunity. And Benjamin Albright, our good friend, had pointed out that the Broncos, they might have some conversations with the LA Rams. The Rams might call the Broncos up and ask for a player like Royce Freeman, who right now, when you look at his projected fit on the roster, considering the Broncos offseason moves and where they're heading, it doesn't make sense right now on paper that Royce Freeman is in the Broncos' plans right now. So could the LA Rams right now maybe initiate trade discussions for Royce Freeman? It is something to keep an eye on, just as long as they give the Broncos Aaron Donald on the defensive side of the ball. I'm sure that the two sides can work something out, but there is a chance that Royce Freeman becomes a trade target, maybe for the LA Rams, also for some other teams that may be in need of a running back. Right now, the Rams probably become the biggest team of need who needs that type of production, that needs a player in that regard. Royce Freeman, in my opinion, I think would be a great fit as a power runner in Sean McVay's offense. And the reason I say that is because Royce Freeman came in and overtook things alongside with Phillip Lindsay. It led to the departure of C.J. Anderson. So for the Broncos, I'm really looking at it from the standpoint, Sean McVay loves those guys that can be power runners. There was a couple seasons ago, where Royce Freeman had a lot of receptions. I mean, from the running back position, he was the lead receiver. And I believe he was the fourth leading receiver on the Broncos in general. I think that was in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. He was the guy that was catching all the passes for the Broncos out of the backfield. And maybe Matthew Stafford could use a veteran guy like Royce, who maybe would benefit from a change of scenery by going to LA. So keep an eye on that. Obviously, I have a lot of respect for Royce Freeman, watching him when I was young, watching him when he was young at the University of Oregon. A lot of carries, over 900 carries in his 4-year career with the Oregon Ducks, but now looking for an opportunity to get on his feet in the NFL. It may not be with the Denver Broncos, but it could be with the LA Rams, or maybe another team that is interested in coming and calling to see about maybe to obtain his services for the 2021 NFL season. Now, I want to get to a little bit of sad news here for the Broncos, for the New York Jets, and just for his family in general. But former Broncos quarterback coach Greg Knapp, who was with the team when the Broncos won Super Bowl 50, he was in a car accident where he was riding his bicycle and a car had hit him. He is currently listed as critical condition. His family, they're asking for well wishes and prayers for this matter. And Knapp, a very well-respected coach around the NFL. He's an offensive assistant right now with Robert Saleh and the New York Jets. So obviously, our thoughts and prayers, we want to extend them out to his family and for him, that he can heal up and that he can just rejoin his family. Right now, it's a lot bigger than football, but obviously a well-respected coach who has many ties to the Broncos organization, has been a tremendous developer of some great quarterbacks in the NFL. He's worked alongside with very closely out of the Gary Kubiak system, and, has an opportunity to really help with the New York Jets. But right now, it's bigger than football. Greg Knapp, we want you to get better. We want you to be able to be there with your family, my friend, and hoping to see you back on the sidelines in the near future. But obviously, our thoughts and our well wishes are extended to Greg Knapp during his time, as he's still listed in critical condition. And it's going to be something we continue to monitor over here at the Locked On Broncos podcast, where we cover the Denver Broncos every single day. In Broncos country, we're always looking for ways to grow the show. If you feel like there's something we could always do better, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm never opposed to feedback, just as long as you keep things respectful. But with that said, Broncos country, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Training camp begins next week. We're hoping to be there up close and personal, being able to watch practice and the position battles that we will be seeing regarding running back, tight end, quarterback, cornerback, safety, linebacker, defensive line. It's going to be fun, and we will have you covered here on the Locked On Broncos podcast. We are one step closer to Broncos football being back, ladies and gentlemen. Can't wait to share this experience with all of you here in this community in Broncos country this upcoming season here on the YouTube channel, where you need to make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button on this video, comment, interact with me. I can't wait to talk Broncos football with you once again tomorrow, Broncos country. I'm Cody Roark. We'll see you then.